Hello and welcome to the long-awaited third part of The Horse and His Boy in the Way of the Lion Narnian Apologetics course. In this section I shall try to find common ground between Christianity and other faiths and worldviews. I'd like to start with a few retractions of claims I made in the last video. If you haven't seen that one yet and have these corrections in mind before you view it. At 10 minutes 25 seconds I claim that it is modern apologists who claim biblical corruption contrary to the teaching of the Quran. This claim began rising to prominence actually in the 11th century and is now repeated unquestioningly. At 21 minutes 18 I reference an insight I gleaned from David Wood's fantastic video series, The Psychology of Islam, without referencing the source. I think it's the best work he's done and he deserves credit for it. At 22:15, I quote George Bernard Shaw from a reference I found in some Dawa material. On investigation, if he ever claimed Muhammad was a saviour, he did so in a private letter and not in a published book. At 29 minutes 33, I claim that child marriage, as enshrined in the Quran, and the example of Muhammad, and perpetuated to this day, was common practice in pre-Islamic Arabia. I was just repeating claims of Muslim apologists, but do not have corroborating evidence to support it. I humbly ask you to forgive me for these errata, and hope that you will keep watching in spite of them. These ones were pointed out to me by Sam Shamoon and Christian Prince, and if you spot any other mistakes, I would ask that you similarly correct me so that I can only present true information. Our learning aims for this video are to consider what Lewis considered the most important thing when witnessing to adherents of other faiths, to identify a golden thread of truth running through systems of thought, and to look at the divisive and unifying person of Jesus Christ. In part 1 of Horse and His Boy, I quoted from my dissertation as follows. Lewis wrote in Mere Christianity, Book 2, Chapter 1, The Rival Conceptions of God, "When I was an atheist, I had to try to persuade myself that most of the human race have always been wrong about the question that mattered to them most. When I became a Christian, I was able to take a more liberal view. But of course, being a Christian does mean thinking that where Christianity differs from other religions, Christianity is right and they are wrong." Lewis loved pagan myths from Northern Europe, especially the Ring of the Nibelung. It was by a liberal view of paganism that he was brought to understand and ultimately to accept the Christian worldview. End quote. Now I quote from C.S. Lewis at Magdalen, produced and sold by Magdalen College. An important turning point was a late-night conversation with his friends Hugo Dyson and J.R.R. Tolkien. After dinner, the three men withdrew to Addison's Walk, the riverside paths on the eastern side of the grounds. The conversation continued in Lewis's rooms in New Buildings until 3 in the morning. They talked about myth and reality, and the idea that Christianity, while similar to great pagan myths that Lewis found powerful and attractive, was a myth with a unique difference because of its claim to be historically authentic, a claim Lewis was soon to accept. End quote. Lewis discusses his respectful view of ancient faiths in his discussion of the Corn King type gods in Miracles, from which I now quote. "From this point of view, the Christian doctrine makes itself so quickly at home amid the deepest apprehensions of reality which we have from other sources, that doubt may spring up in a new direction. Is it not fitting in too well? So well that it must have come into men's minds from seeing this pattern elsewhere, particularly in the annual death and resurrection of the corn? For there have, of course, been many religions in which that annual drama, so important for the life of the tribe, was almost admittedly the central theme, and the deity, Adonis, Osiris, or another, almost undisguisedly a personification of the corn, a corn king, who died and rose again each year. Is not Christ simply another corn king?" End quote. He answers his own rhetorical question in the following conclusion, from which I unapologetically quote once more. "With this, our sketch of the grand miracle may end. Its credibility does not lie in obviousness, pessimism, optimism, pantheism, materialism. All have this obvious attraction. Each is confirmed at the first glance by multitudes of facts. Later on, each meets insuperable obstacles. The doctrine of the Incarnation works into our minds quite differently. It digs beneath the surface, works through the rest of our knowledge by unexpected channels, harmonizes best with our deepest apprehensions and our second thoughts, and in union with these undermines our superficial opinions. It has little to say to the man who is still certain that everything is going to the dogs, or that everything is getting better and better, or that everything is God, or that everything is electricity. Its hour comes when these wholesale creeds have begun to fail us. Whether the thing really happened is a historical question, but when you turn to history, you will not demand for it that kind and degree of evidence which you would rightly demand for something intrinsically improbable. Only that kind and degree which you would demand for something which, if accepted, illuminates and orders all other phenomena, explains both our laughter and our logic, our fear of the dead and our knowledge that it is somehow good to die, and at one stroke covers what multitudes of separate theories will hardly cover for us if this is rejected." End quote. Lewis then, far from disdaining or showing open enmity with other faiths, found himself respecting and even admiring many elements. We see this with his treatment of Colormene storytelling, and with the treatment of Emeth, who we will consider in the last battle section of the course. With this foundation of thought firmly in place, let us now consider how this might translate into a fruitful conversation. Obviously, when using this material in apologetic conversations, ask searching questions to address the real concerns of the individuals with whom you are conversing, lest you stumble into perpetrating the straw man fallacy. There are certain things that Christians and non-Christians can agree on. I have selected a handful of these to coincide with the worldview elements of morality, human value, God, purpose, and creation. Let's take each in turn. Morality. In The Abolition of Man, Lewis points out that most moral codes throughout time have had a remarkable similarity. In his lengthy and edifying appendix to the book, he sketches 8 areas of agreement between polytheist, monotheist, animist, and pantheist modes of thought. These are the law of general beneficence, the law of special beneficence, duties to elders and ancestors, duties to children and posterity, the law of justice, subdivided into sexual justice, honesty, and court justice, the law of good faith and veracity, the law of mercy, and the law of magnanimity. Through Egyptian, Norse, Greek, Roman, Hindu, Native American, and Aboriginal and Australian perspectives, these moral norms are taught and maintained as described in the Ten Commandments and the Sermon on the Mount. There is one significantly missing voice in the mix, but the vast majority of mankind throughout history and around the world have a strikingly similar moral code. One might almost say that it is written on men's hearts. Thus, when inviting an adherent of an alternative worldview to know Christ, you can first show the significant similarity in our ideas of right and wrong, and then present Christ's example, which is superior to all the rest of humanity. Human value. The first part of the Tao, the laws of beneficence and upward and downward duties, concentrate on man's treatment of other men. Consistently, the picture arises that one should do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Jesus never claimed that this was a unique teaching, only that it was correct. The difference is that without the foundational belief that man is made in imago Dei, the image of God, this belief is baseless. So the Jewish teaching of love your neighbour as yourself and love the stranger as yourself, as found in Leviticus 19, are consistent with the teaching of Genesis 1:27. God created mankind in his own image. Alternative anthropological models, such as the atheist evolutionary model or Buddhist dependent origination, fail to provide any reason to regard humans as anything special. So a moral preference for humanity becomes nothing more than speciesism. This makes Christianity, as the heir and successor of Judaism, both morally acceptable and intellectually satisfying to a seeker from other worldview traditions. God and the category of the divine. Approximately 84% of the world's population believe in the supernatural realm, according to the Pew Research study, The Changing Global Religious Landscape. By far the most populous worldview positions are those affirming a form of monotheism. Though truth is not determined democratically, for instance, a class of school children voting on the sex of a pet hamster wouldn't change the biological fact, it does allow us to speak intelligibly about the category of the divine with the majority of mankind. Atheism here is the exception, since that philosophy is deficient in the area of a spiritual construct. Thus, talking about God to an atheist is meaningless to them, since their philosophy can't encompass that category. But most other individuals we meet, be they Muslim, Hindu or Sikh, can reasonably dialogue about divine things. At this point, we can respectfully ask what they believe and compare and contrast it with the Judeo-Christian conception of God, Yahweh. Like Aslan appearing to Rabadash, this may be met with cries of "Demon! Demon!" and waggling ears, but it may also be more like Hwin's experience of meeting Aslan for the first time. Chapter 14, How Bree Became a Wiser Horse, I quote, "Please," she said, "you're so beautiful. You may eat me if you like. I'd sooner be eaten by you than fed by anyone else." "Dearest daughter," said Aslan, planting a lion's kiss on her twitching velvet nose, "I knew you would not be long in coming to me. Joy shall be yours." Purpose. If you chart a horizontal and vertical axis showing long-term and short-term benefit versus detriment, 3 of the quadrants could be summarized as hedonism, rat race, and nihilism. The final quadrant, with both long and short-term benefit, could be called happiness. This perspective on life is exemplified in the state known as purpose. This is the intersection of passion and ability. All humans live as if they have purpose and that their lives have meaning. This is an illusion, according to atheism, which denies that life can have any purpose more lasting or real than anything else. Since the whole of creation is subject to the second law of thermodynamics and thus will eventually run out of usable energy and suffer heat death, which coincidentally is also evidence that the universe is not past eternal, any purpose must be transitory and ultimately meaningless. Albert Camus wrestled with this reality, for which I respect him. However, I disagree with him in the strongest terms with his conclusions, which would probably have led to his eventual suicide had a traffic accident not preempted it. For a Buddhist, all of causality is an illusion, but even in that worldview, purpose is attainable in the pursuit of enlightenment and eventual nirvana. Only with the concept of eternity is purpose a meaningful word. Otherwise, we're all just specks of dust, doomed to extinction. This bleak and unlivable and, fortunately, false. In inviting people to the Christian worldview, we can point out that they are already living as if they have purpose, and then offer them a grounding for that purpose, which only theism can reasonably offer. Creation. Hugh Ross likes, I've quoted Hugh Ross before, Hugh Ross likes to say that God has given mankind two books by which we know him. The book of inspiration, that is the Bible, and the book of revelation, which is nature. The Bible itself says that the heavens declare the glory of God, in Lewis's favourite psalm, Psalm 19. I keep promising to address this in The Magician's Nephew, but I will say a few comments here. William Lane Craig has done extensive and very persuasive work on both the cosmological and teleological arguments, which, put briefly, are: whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe had a cause. And the universe is incredibly fine-tuned for the existence of intelligent life. This fine-tuning is due to either chance, necessity, or design. It is not due to chance or necessity. Therefore, it is due to design. These arguments take us as far as God as the best explanation, and would be agreed by most theists. Indeed, Craig's preferred iteration of the cosmological argument is the Kalam, which was originally developed by Al-Ghazali, a Muslim thinker. The logical progression from establishing the universe has a cause is to deduce what can be known about that cause. It must be outside its own creation, thus it must be spaceless, immaterial, and eternal, that is, outside time, since space, matter and time are properties of the created order. It must be immeasurably powerful and intelligent to have ordered things so precisely as per the teleological argument. It must be personal, since only persons can choose to create. And, thanks to the recent discovery of the Higgs boson, we can reasonably claim that it is multi-personal, since you would need multiple energy sources interacting to begin to create the quantities and values of the matter that we see. Many adherents of other faiths, as well as atheism, find that their religious or anti-religious position helps them to make sense out of the world around them. It would be helpful to point out to them that they need not jettison their foundational appetite for wonder, but we can offer an undergirding of it with the firm foundations of Christian theism. The figure of Jesus is accepted by most world religions in some form or other. For example, Jehovah's Witnesses believe him to be the Archangel Michael, and that he returned, invisibly and undetectably, in 1914. Mormons have some very confusing and disturbing belief about a heavenly father and mother, and then sexual union with Mary. The Moonies see him as a perfect man with a family. Christian scientists say that Jesus displayed the Christ idea. Even Wiccans see him as a teacher of love and compassion. New Agers regard him as an ascended master. Muslims recognize him as a sinless, virgin-born, miracle-working prophet. Baha'i recognize him as one of many manifestations of God. Judaism see him as a good rabbi. Hindus variously see him as a teacher, a guru, or an incarnation of Vishnu. That's an avatar. Hare Krishna teaching has him an enlightened teacher, and some even exalt him to be Krishna or an avatar. Buddhists in the West see him as a teacher, and in the East as a bodhisattva. Even spiritualism hail him as one of their own, and as an advanced medium, and now a spirit to be communicated with. In each case, we find that Jesus is adopted and remade in the image of the believers, but always as a high and exalted figure. The difference with Christianity is that we have strong evidence to support our claim that he is, was, and will be God incarnate. Some of these lines of evidence are his own self-understanding as God, as recorded by eyewitnesses very close to the date. Old Testament prophecies fulfilled in detail by Jesus' life, death and resurrection. Historical evidence for Jesus' life, death and resurrection, including eyewitness testimony, enemy attestation, and the rise of early Christianity. Jesus' unique and unexpected resurrection from the dead, sparking the birth of Christianity. These and other lines of evidence are treated extensively in the McDowell tome Evidence That Demands a Verdict, Life-Changing Truth for a Skeptical World, which I gladly endorse and encourage serious defenders to avail themselves of. So, since we have such stunning common ground as Jesus to build on, we can offer a view of the historical Jesus which other faiths lack. None can show the truth of their Jesus figure in any text nearer to the time and place than the biblical record. Thus their claims boil down to blind faith, while our faith follows firm facts, not fluid feelings. In conclusion, Christianity can be recommended to people of other religious worldviews by building on our shared foundations of morality, human experience, and Jesus. We all share this reality and our experience of human nature, but only Christianity can offer a fully satisfying and explanatory framework to understand it. Where other faiths fail, there Christianity can flourish. Our job is to plant those seeds of life in the cracks. And now it's your turn to discuss. As usual, feel free to have this conversation in the comments section to share with the Way of the Lion community, or in private in your own homes or wherever you find yourselves. I will read 5 facets of other religions. You can then pause the video and discuss with your friends or comment in the comment section below, then press play again for a suggestion of how these can be responded to. Can you plant seeds in the gaps and show how Christianity provides the foundation they are seeking? I can be good without believing in God. Press pause and discuss. This is a common atheist meme, which I think we can all agree with. I know many atheists whose moral life is equivalent or better than my own. The difference is that within Christianity, the concept of good and evil or right and wrong are grounded with firm roots in the nature and character of God. In atheism, any attempt to ground the morality that they hold to ends up being fallacious, such as the case from human society, or circular, such as claiming objective morality. It just is because it is. This opens a door to invite them to philosophically ground what they already hold to be true. All life is equally sacred. I'd like you to press pause and discuss that, please. This is a superficially beautiful Buddhist belief, which becomes disturbing when lived out. If all life is equally sacred, then there's no difference between stepping on an ant or running over a child. Most consciences are appalled by this inference and tend to believe the Christian perspective that human life is of greater value than that of a cockroach or a wasp. In Christianity, this is grounded in the doctrine of Imago Dei, being made in the image of God. But on any atheistic or pantheistic models, this is mere species-centric favoritism. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Pause and think about that. Another way of saying this is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. I didn't say that very well. I apologize to anyone who speaks Arabic. But yes, that is known as the Shahada, which is a doctrine of faith that Muslims must say. In fact, if you say it in Arabic in the presence of an adult Muslim man, you have just become a Muslim, allegedly. I don't know whether that's actually held to, but see, the title of Reza Aslan's book, No God But God, is one which any monotheist can get behind. It is a central doctrine of the Judeo-Christian tradition as well as Islam. The problem comes when we examine the unique parts, that is, the name Allah and the addition of Muhammad. Allah comes from the Nabatean term al-ilah, meaning the God, and is roughly equivalent to the Hebrew Elohim. The God revealed by the Quran, allegedly through Muhammad, is qualitatively different from the God revealed in the Bible. Specifically, he is deficient in the quality of love, in loving only those that love him first, deficient in historical knowledge, in believing the Alexander romances and other fairy tales to be true, deficient in scientific knowledge, in claiming the sun sets in a muddy spring, for example, and deficient in theological knowledge, imagining the Christian teaching of the Trinity to include God the Father, Jesus the Son, and Mary the Mother. Here we can pull an Acts 17:23 move and say with Paul, "For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship. And this is what I am going to proclaim to you." Purpose is an illusion. Pause and consider that. This is an oft-repeated mantra in Hinduism, Buddhism, and atheism. As previously mentioned, one cannot even attempt to live it out. It is a claim that self-destructs on even a cursory examination, since the speaker has a purpose in saying it, has learnt enough to consider it, which demonstrates purpose, and is engaged in a conversation with you, which must have some purpose. Since we all live our lives as if they had meaning and purpose, this offers an opening to present a worldview which makes sense of their yearning. Christianity is one such worldview, since it has an eternal perspective, so it doesn't stop at the grave. The cosmos is all that it is, or ever was, or ever will be. Pause and think about that for a second. This was atheist astronomer Carl Sagan's catchphrase. The idea of a universe that is eternal in the past is also held by the Vedic traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism. This is a very minority view in physicist and cosmologist circles nowadays, where the vast majority hold to a Big Bang type event, which started the whole show. This fits with Islam, Sikhism, and Christianity. The statement also presents a closed system where no outside influence can interact. This view accounts for the normal experience of mankind, but it does not allow for the witness of miracles across culture and time. Christianity can offer a model including a finite universe, which allows for the second law of thermodynamics without violation, and also a contingent universe, which can be interacted with by its creator in accordance with human experience. So, our learning aims for this video were to consider what Lewis considered the most important thing when witnessing to adherents of other faiths, which we saw was that each contain an element of truth which can be supported with a superior framework. To identify a golden thread of truth running through systems of thought, which we did via each of the worldview elements. And to look at the divisive and unifying person of Jesus Christ, who we showed to be best presented and supported by Christianity. I hope you found this video interesting, helpful and informative. If you've also enjoyed it, then I would ask you to share it with other interested parties. Click like or comment why or why not. If you liked it enough to see the next instalment, then I would invite you to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. The next episode will be on the magician's nephew and the interaction between Christian faith and science. Until then, I pray a lion's kiss upon your velvety noses. Goodbye.